Some years ago, I was standing and praying next to our then Bishop in North Wales by the tomb of one of our greatest poets. It was also part of what my grandfather used to call the cannon fodder that fed the guns in the trenches. Send in more men, send in more men. He was one of our greatest poets, and he wrote this huge, difficult poem on the way there, the hero, Al-Arur, which won the chair at the Eisteddfod. But when the bard was asked to get up, he wasn't there. He was no longer. And they draped the chair in black. He was only one of thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Their life in that generation was essentially doomed. Few came back alive, or if they did, they were in bits. We don't even think of that. We have a right to be here. We have a long life ahead of us. We can enjoy life. I am pretty sure that in the trenches there were no atheists. Many now don't need God. But we can actually be like that too if we're not careful. We were warned one time by the Abbot General when I was in France. That can happen in the cloister too. The atheists of the cloister, functioning perfectly well, but not plugged in. I want this morning with you to take you on this journey of gratitude. Only one of the 9, and the most unlikely, came back. But he was the very one who had no rights. He wasn't excluded. He wasn't accepted. He was a Samaritan, a heretic, a schismatic. He fell on his face. He cried in a loud voice. The others, of course, had every right. That's us, if we're not careful. Now, it can apply to the gift of life itself. I remember reading on some of those tombs there in Flanders, things like what one mother had put there, my boy. Another, I will think of Geraldine as long as I have light. And others, an infantry soldier, no name. And on it went. Lives extinguished after hardly beginning. I'd like to remind you that every morning, every time you wake up in the morning and open your eyes to the daylight, remember, you don't have a right to be here. In French, there's an expression, le démon du réveil, the demon of the waking up. Let your first thought be snatched by the demon. Oh, another day. I remember hearing this way back when I was living in a seminary while doing classics at Aberystwyth with one of the good priests there. He muttered, one day leads to another day, leads to another day, leads to another day. Hope, gratitude. Is it that attitude too? Remember, you perhaps could not have opened your eyes this morning. You could last week have been caught in an accident. Many who die in accidents hadn't a clue it was coming. Or you may have come through a week where you were told you actually had cancer. Suddenly, life had changed very suddenly with this dense sense, at least sort of Damocles over your head. What is my future? Another might have spent this week in unending, atrocious pain. For him, all that mattered was to be one moment without pain. And we perhaps had a painless week and didn't even thank God for it. Others, and I've become very much aware of this now, are in totalitarian regimes. And right now, as we calmly pray, many, and I say many, are being atrociously tortured. Healthy young men and women, often because of what they believe. And we groan if we have a pain in a little finger. Gratitude. When we were children, we were all sitting in front of our preacher, and he pulled out this bit of paper in church from his pulpit and said to us in Welsh, "Beth ydwch chi weld? What can you see?" And we all, to a man, said, "A white sheet." And he, at the end of this interrogation, simply said in Welsh, or rather, the other way around. No one had seen the white sheet. We had all said one other thing: a blot. And perhaps that's what we're doing with life as well. We only see the blot. There is another specific area where actually God is not rewarded and thanked as he should be. It's what we're doing right now. I am quite convinced that one of the areas that wounds most the heart of our God is the fact that he's not thanked when he gives himself without reserve. How many absorb the grace of Eucharistic encounter? How many switch off totally from what is secondary at that moment and stay in it and listen and wait for a word? How many realize what's going on at that point? A work that helped me greatly in recent years on that one was what was given to the living mystic Catalina in Colombia. She was allowed to see and hear many things during the course of Holy Mass, and one thing that offended the Saviour greatly was Holy Communion. It was that he was not being understood. People were using him at that point to get what they wanted, but they didn't want him. They didn't want to meet him. They didn't understand what it was to receive him in love and total attention as the greatest of lovers. No one understood what he was trying to do in Holy Communion. This morning, I was listening to someone who was with me on retreat, who's now gone back to another country, and that person said something to this effect. Two things which hit me. She had sensed, she was right next to the altar, many, and she said many angels, a great many angels she felt. And she'd said something else, that she was greatly moved by the fact that those who came were not in a hurry to get away. They stayed and stayed and stayed, and the Lord was able to get through. Grace was dense in the air, and not a grain of it was wasted. That's, I am sure, what the Lord has on offer, but seems very rarely able to get, even from the pious. I make a jump. Holy Communion is a gratuitous moment, as is human love. We're not there to get something at all. Sir Philip Neri was a man of joy and gratuitous praise and thanksgiving. I remember before and after ordination being in the chapel where he would celebrate on a daily basis and go into ecstasy. First it was to assist at a mass said by a friend of mine, after his ordination. He was from the same college, and afterwards to celebrate myself. And it was the same experience. Time did not matter. St. Philip Neri would go into ecstasy, and he'd actually sometimes take off physically, levitate. He would take about 2 hours, and he was in a different realm. One day, when he was celebrating a public mass, he noticed that a lady went out after Holy Communion without making thanksgiving. He turned to his 2 acolytes and said to them, "Follow that lady all the way home with your 2 candles." Now, he would say the same perhaps to us, if we do the same. I remember being there. It was shortly after ordination, and this message came to me very strongly. Never will I celebrate with one eye on the watch. I will not think of time. This is outside time, and time must not be its limit. In the East, they don't do that. I remember in the Holy Land, the old status quo is this. It's written and it's still observed. The Latins come in after the Greeks have finished in Bethlehem. And that can mean a quarter of an hour either way of 3 hours. Time doesn't exist for them. And we groan and fidget if the priest goes on for more than he's supposed to. All this has crept in because we don't know what we're doing. Take away the sacraments, as actually has been done in the lockdown. Attitudes occasionally are reversed, but very soon they come back. Don't let it happen to you. One last thing. We have a blessing when we're together. Right now, you can hear a pin drop. Everyone wants to be here. Everyone is open to grace. Do you think the priest doesn't pick it up? The angels know full well, and the Lord is pleased. Much grace is here. Let us console our King, and gratuitously embrace him and thank him. Embrace him and thank him.